little pin. You can drive that. Oh, and by the way, you don't want to dry fire these things. Just a little bit to the side of the shooter. 1, 2, 3. All in 25, 25 and a half, 26 grain. Every once in a while, get a hankering to go back to the original guns that I started playing around with 25 plus years ago, maybe 28 years ago now. And here's one of them. We've got a first generation Colt in 41 caliber. Colt 41. Arguably one of the most popular and most iconic guns ever. This one has been dated to 1897. 97 or 98? Not really sure. These guns are known worldwide. Copies have been made of them, replicas. And just because of all the movies, the resurgence in the 40s and the 30s and the 20s and the early 19th century, early 20th century of cowboy movies and cowboy shooting. 41 Colt, not long Colt, 41 Colt. Got a bunch of brass here. We've got some brand new brass. And since there is just a really sad dearth of information out there on this piece of history, I thought we'd go through, pull it out, play with it, fondle a little bit, give you guys an up close and personal look at this national treasure. Original grips. Look at that. Very, very nice. Patina is worn. Yeah. Oh. Point a gun at you. Just an iconic gun. Man, it's fun to shoot. Just think, a gun that's older than anybody else on earth. How can you not want to shoot this? And it is safe to shoot. We got to go through some of the history on this gun first, just a little bit. You know, introduced in 1877. Along with the Colt Lightning. Yeah, that double action revolver, which sadly we don't have. I had a chance to get one years ago. Never got a chance. Never had the cash, actually. And that's what happens when you're a poor student. You got to buy food, guns, food, guns, food. I know it's a tough decision. Single action army. That's what this model is. The Colt Thunder was that double action gun. And the Lightning. There was a Lightning and a Thunder. Very, very cool. Interesting facts. Billy the Kid had one of these in 41 Colt on him the night he was shot by Pat Garrett. And John Wesley Hardin, too. You guys know him, right? Yeah, he was armed with the same gun when he was shot in the back of the head. Old John Selman in El Paso. In 1892 that is, Colt introduced a new model Army and Navy, both in 38 and 41 long Colt. So this gun has a awesome history. You cannot get more American than a single action revolver in 41 Colt. Of course, they make them. They were made in 44 centerfire. 38 Smith & Wesson 38. They had a bunch of different calibers. But the history behind these guns, just fantastic. It's too bad it couldn't talk. Who knows what it's seen, who fondled it, where it came from. And yeah, you can go get a letter from Colt and pay I forgot how much it is. I don't know, I want to say 50 bucks, 85 bucks, something like that. And they'll send you an authentication letter telling you where it was originally shipped, just by looking at the serial number, which this gun matches. Yes, it does. You've got the serial number on the bottom over here, matches. Yeah, and I'm not going to put the serial number on film, but the serial numbers match. So this is a piece of American history. Just very, very exciting to get to hold something like this. And these guns were not made just to go into your drawer and sit there, which I think this one had for a while there, was put away. But the condition of the bore was, the bore was spectacular on this gun. And, they want to be shot. Basically, it's what it is. It comes down to these guns, and I'll show you guys if you're not familiar, to remove the cylinder. Put the gun half cock. Open the loading gate. And you're going to come over here, and you're going to depress the spring here. Pull out your pin, and you've disassembled your gun. When it comes down to whether these guns are safe for smokeless or not, one of the biggest things that's out there right now is, if you look over here on the left side of the gun, there is supposed to be a proof mark, and there's going to be a VP mark, and that stands for verified proof, which means that Colt took these guns and they were made to shoot smokeless powder. This gun, let's see if we get up close, has no such marking. You'll find them right here. Okay, the VP mark has no such marks. So we're going to err on the side of caution, and we're going to load this, and we're going to shoot this with black powder. I think it's more fun. I think it's more authentic. It's how the gun was designed. The thin lands and the wide grooves that are in here were made for black powder. That way it didn't accumulate too much fouling when you're shooting it. Now, Colt proof marked VP on the smokeless guns, the guns that were approved for smokeless, approximately 1900, but there's some debate to that, 1899, 1900. They said the serial number started about 192,000. But again, if you can't find any information on it, contact Colt, ask them for the info, and if they can't help you, just err on the side of caution and use use black powder. Smokeless will, even with light charges, you can pound these guns apart. And why do you want to do that to a piece of history? Again, I come to the history. I'm obsessed with the history. It's so cool. I think it's so cool. You know, you look at these old photos with these guys that long dead, rotting in the graves. Their bones are ash, and the guns are there with them. Same gun, well, not the same gun, same model gun that we have here. And just think, the gun will be passed down generation to generation. This is a piece of living history. Your grandkids, your great-grandkids, your great-great-grandkids will be able to shoot this gun if they know how to load it and don't kill themselves doing it in the process, which is why we're doing this video. There's no information about how to properly load for this gun. So here we are, taking these out, gonna take them out to shoot. Now, there's a really, really good factory, it's kind of like a factory manual by a guy named Kuhnhausen. If you guys ever want to get one of those and check on there, his information on here, coming out with the serial numbers, 1900, serial number starts about 192,000, but his book says the verified proof didn't show up until about 1901. Okay, so that's why I don't see any verified proof on here. I'm going to take this gun as a smokeless gun. We don't want to use smokeless in here. This is a black powdered gun only. So take that for what you want. One of the really big things that these guns would do, what people would do with them, is because 41 Colt was such a, in later times, we're talking like in the 20s and the 30s, 41 Colt became a little harder to find. And so what people would do is they would, since they had the rifle already, they would take and they would bore through the cylinder and who knows when they had done this. And they would take this gun, and so it went from shooting 41 Colt, which is the same diameter as a 38-44. Now 38-44 is the same diameter, like I said, as the 401. So you could safely shoot these guns. Well, they used to be able to safely shoot the guns with a 38-44 round. The only thing is they bore these cylinders out to accept the thicker brass. And you can tell by taking your bullets, and these are the 200 grainers that we had cast up. We're going to show you how to do that. And just kind of slipping them through, and you'll see they kind of just slide right on through the cylinder. So we know that these things are just overboard. And you can also see, oh, here, comes right out. So another reason why we're using the type of bullet that we're using, which is going to be the hollow base. And you can see that they just slip right on down. Without having the hollow base to open up, we're going to go into this a little bit later on, you're going to have no accuracy on this gun whatsoever. Another way that you can load these, and I think it's a little more difficult, is with a heeled bullet. Kind of like a 22. The 22 has the heel, which goes inside, it crimps, and then the rest of the bullet sits flush with the case. You can load them up like that, but I think it's easier to load up the hollow base because you don't have to worry about bore size. And the bore sizes will vary on these models considerably. When we did this one, we're going to throw in some photos here. This one came out to .402, I believe. Yeah. And the 41 cylinder throats, these guys, this one mic'd out to about .413. So you saw how easy that slipped through. And again, that was made to shoot the 38-44. And the 38-44 diameter is the same as this gun. Same bullet, so they were pretty interchangeable. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you through the process of, you found the gun, you don't know what size the bore is. We're going to take you through the sizing process, how to slug your bore, all the way up to loading, get some loads. And for this time we're going to be doing black powder only, even though for you guys that have guns that can take smokeless powder, you can use 5 grains of your favorite fast burning smokeless powder like Unique. Trail Boss is another really good powder for this gun. You can do Trail Boss, you could do Unique. 3 grains of Bullseye. Bullseye is another really good powder. It'll push that to about 700 to 800 feet per second. 5 grains of Unique, I'd say. But again, we are not going to do that with this gun. This gun is going to be totally black powder. And we got a little bit of a crack on there. And we're going to this is going to be basically the definitive guide. Oh, another thing that a lot of guys will tell you is that this right here, when it was black powder, it would have a screw coming in this way to hold everything together. But you see, this has got the spring, like your Rugers of today. Where do you think Bill Ruger got the idea from? Exactly. So you see that? That doesn't tell you anything. There's no verified proof marks on the grip. So we're going to assume this gun is black powder only. So stick around. We're going to have some fun. We're going to cast. We're going to shoot. We're going to load. This is everything you ever wanted to know about 41 Colt Single Action Army. Now, before we can even think about casting bullets for this gun or loading for this gun, we want to know what our bore diameter is. And after that, we're going to figure out what the throat diameter is on each of these to make sure that we're not getting a bullet that's coming out one size through here, being swaged from the throat, and then going into the barrel. But with the mold type that we chose for this particular project, that's the hollow base mold, it really doesn't have that big of a difference to worry about. But still, you want to know what your bore diameter is. For this, you want to remove your cylinder, and you want to get a bullet that's already cast, or cast your own bullet, in dead soft lead, not wheel weight. See if you can find some plumber's lead, roofing lead, you know, the sheath from the roofs they used to use. Plumber's lead is awesome. X-ray lead, stuff like that that's really soft. This is a .460 diameter bullet cast from a Lee real mold made for black powder. Specifically, I shoot this one out of the Ruger Old Army. We've inserted our gun into our handy dandy wood vise. Wooden jaws, please, with leather. And you're not going to tighten it as so much as you are going to use it to hold it in place. Now remember, this gun, you don't want to crack the beautiful grips that are on there. So we're going to use the shield over here against the flat of the vise. And all we're going to do is just snug it up. All we're doing is just giving it a place to purchase on. Do not over tighten it, right? Next thing you want to do is you want to get your favorite lube. Use a little bit of Hoppies here. Always want to lube up your bullet. Place it down, and then starting very gently, give it some firm taps. Now when you get close to the muzzle, stop with the hammering directly and move on to your brass punch. I like to use a brass punch. The bigger and wider the head, the better, so you get full contact. Now, we've pushed that in there. Everything is swollen up. That's why you got to use soft lead. And we'll continue. And you can see how, as it goes in, it starts to dimple. And you want to remove your punch every once in a while to make sure it doesn't get stuck. That's why we're using pure brass. This doesn't hurt the barrel at all, people. You guys remember from our previous videos where we've done this with our rifles, if you've done it right, you'll get a beautiful slug that looks like it was shot and hit a steel backstop. That'll go back into the pot. Now, you can see what a nice seal we have right there. And we'll continue. You can hear that. Switch over to my wood dowel now. And you want to make sure you catch it from the back so it doesn't deform when it comes out. It's gonna hit, I can feel it hitting the forcing cone now. Now it's getting a little bit tight, not by much. Wow, yeah, it's... Keep our finger under here to keep it from flopping on the ground. Yeah, there we go. All right. And there you have your perfectly formed bore casting. See that? You can see the shallow lands and grooves, which is what early black powder guns were made. How they were made. See that? So they won't collect fouling, so much fouling. Back to the bench. We'll measure it up. You want to measure the diameter of your slug that we just cast, or we just pushed through our bore, using a micrometer. You can use calipers. You won't get as accurate reading as you will with a pair of micrometers. So if you have ball micrometers, even better. This is just a cheesy one, an old one I picked up from, I think it's a Craftsman. Doesn't say. Probably Chinese made, right? Yeah. Get a pair of these. Then what you want to do is, I like to use my shooting bag to kind kind of hold everything still right there. Grab your slug. And first thing I like to do is count how many lands and grooves we have. So start on one side. You can mark them. You can use a knife if you want to mark your grooves. Mark one, but it doesn't take that much to do. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so we got 6 lands and 6 grooves. Very simple to calculate, to measure. When you have 6, you just measure it across the grooves here. We're going to go on, let's see, 4, that's 4.400 and a half, 0.401 and a half. Now, don't worry about what we did with the hammer, hammering that soft piece of lead through the bore. Remember, these are rated, these barrels are rated at, tens of thousands of PSI. What we just did probably didn't even reach the scale. I wouldn't worry about it. I've done it through rifles and tons of handguns, tons of rifles, never had any problems. So, but again, it's your gun. You do what you want to do. Alright, and now just for giggles, what we're going to do is we did 2 castings. Here they are. We're going to run these down your cylinder and see how tight the throats are. Now this works really well when you have a newer model revolver like a Ruger or something like that, because what happens is it'll tell you if your bullet is getting swaged down in here and it's too small to be fitting properly in your barrel and it's bouncing around as it exits, which is not good. That's not good accuracy. So let's show you. I'm dropping them through and they're just sliding. See that? 2, 3, 4. I might be doubling them up. 5, 6. All right, I get the picture here. So the throats, there's no issues with the throats. Look like they were bored through. A lot of these, like we had said before, were bored through for 4440 cartridges. Guys were using these to shoot 4440 because it's kind of the same diameter it used to be. So it makes, really doesn't give me, it's not surprising. So you can also try this with your standard new issue revolvers, people, and that'll tell you right there if you're hitting, a pattern instead of a group. It may be that when the bullets get shot, right, they come through and they're getting swaged down here in the throats, which is no good for accuracy because by the time they hit here, they're already too small. They're going to be bouncing around on the way out. Something to think about. You see, this all comes together. It all works out. Doesn't matter what kind of gun, what kind of revolver, what year the revolver was made, or what year the handgun was made. Everything is relative. Show what we got going here. This is an Old West mold. There you go. Very nicely made mold. There's some rumors about Old West going around. Don't listen to them. I think they're pretty fine folks. See that? Nice. Very nice. Almost as nice as Mehek out of Europe. Look at that. Yeah, it's our hollow base mold. Here is the pin that we're going to use. So we got our pot heated up. We got almost pure lead. Actually, what I did was I put 3/4 pure lead and the rest is wheel weights, just because I don't want it too soft. So a couple things you can do to keep your bullets flowing. Even though this is a single mold here, it's going to take a little bit to get them going. We did already one, and you can see how it came out. Hollow base. That's cool enough. You see that? Well, actually, the hollow base stuck onto our point. So I'll show you guys a trick on how to make them so they slide off. And this one's a little bit wrinkly because the mold, and a little bit shiny. And remember, when the bullet's wrinkled like that and a little bit shiny, too bright, the mold is cold. So, but still, a very nice bullet. Look at that. Once it cools completely, we're going to measure it. See what we got. Remember, our bore on the Colt was .402 in diameter. Now, here's a trick you guys can do. It works really well on iron molds and all molds. This is the pin for the mold. I got some of this blue stuff from another mold order that I did. This stuff works great, but if you guys don't have this, you can use brand new clean car oil. That's right, motor oil. That's what I use. I've used it before. I put a dab on there, right, just like that. They tell you don't do this, but you know what? It works. Swirl it around it like that. That'll fill in all the micro pores. Wipe it off. See how this mold design is? It's really ingenious if you look at it. They've got a screw tapped on the bottom, and they got this little roll pin that they hammered in, which holds it. Get that on film. Holds it in place so it doesn't fall out. It's a little bit better design than some of the old Lyman molds I've got. Another thing you guys can do, you're going around like this, you swap it around. If you look on the bottom, you'll start to get a mold. The bottom of the sprue plate will start to smear with lead right here. What you want to do is just take your motor oil or whatever you got, put a drop just like that. Usually I like to get this thing hot enough that it dances on there, and then I just wipe it down, and that will solve your sprue smearing on the bottom of your plate issue. If you start to see like a lump of, I'm kind of off here because I'm doing this left-handed. If you see a lump of lead that won't come off, use your 4/0 steel wool when this is hot with a little bit of your motor oil or your blue lube, and that'll rub right off. But don't use it on your well, don't use the 4/0 steel wool on your brass mold. You'll probably hurt it. So I like to put a little bit right there, especially around the hole here. That way the lead kind of smooths, goes in really smooth. And you can tighten up your sprue if you want. I think this is just right for us. So let's cast a few here and we'll see what's going on. Give it a second for that sprue to solidify. Takes on that glossy color. See what they do. There you go, slip right off. You see that? Last time it didn't slip off. So now we just got to cast up a couple hundred of these puppies. And we'll get going. Nothing like casting bullets on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday after lazy afternoon. Especially when the weather is either hot or rainy or whatever. Look at that. We still have wrinkles on there because the mold's cold. If you guys don't cast, I highly recommend you cast, because it'll keep you in your own supply for bullets forever. You know, get a couple 100 pounds of lead, scrounge up some wheel weights. If you know somebody's a plumber, if you know somebody who's in a roofing, if you know some dentists, they have old X-ray lead. Works great. Especially that soft lead. Stuff works really good for black powder. And that's what we're loading with the 41 Colt. Yeah. Still a little shiny. But for the velocities we're going to be lobbing these guys at, I'm not worried about it. Right? I'm going to pop them off my glove here. There we go. So, there we go. Still got a little bit of wrinkle, a little bit of a wrinkly appearance to them, just because they're, whew, it's hot. Just because their mold's still got to warm up come the temp. But I like to do this to break in, especially since this is a new mold. Give a little bit of a heating breaking period as you force it. There we go, he popped right out. Well, you cannot beat casting your own bullets, especially for an obsolete gun or an obsolete round when ammo is not available. Let me show you what we got so far, guys. Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Just think, it always amazes me that we can go from this Just dirty wheel weights. Look at that. For me, they're beautiful. They look beautiful. You go from this to the pot where you've got your, check it, your liquid gold. For me, this is gold. Lead is worth more than gold sometimes, guys. Especially in an area where you can't get the bullets. To making these right here. Look at that. Beautiful silver pills. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Now let me show you something. Remember I was telling you, how do I know when the lead is soft enough to use black powder? You can see here where it fell off the bench. It rolled off the bench. 4-foot bench, 4.5 feet. See that? We got a little ding right there. So, we're not talking about punting the damn thing or throwing it, you know. This just rolled right off. And you know what? Guess what? This guy, back in the pot. Along with your sprues, your splashes, they all go back in the pot. Now, I wouldn't do this if I were you guys. Remember, we're professional casters here. So, a lot of guys, they do this over a campfire. You can do that. That's awesome. You don't have the mess at home. Excuse me while I grab my paper towel. You don't have the mess at home, but you can see we have no smoke. We already fluxed our pot. You don't have to worry about having to have any kind of smoke in the house. That's why guys like doing this out on a campfire. So, if you guys don't cast, you should really look into it. Especially if you guys are thinking about shooting the obsolete calibers. Obsolete calibers, the guns are there. And it opens up a ton. Now watch, using your hand, open your sprue. Look at that. Beautiful. And then I've been launching them. Check it out. Their first flight. Cool, huh? Lightly tap it. And we've been oiling our sprue here, and our sprue plate has been going good. And we just been laying you see how we're doing our technique. After you do this for a while, you develop a technique that works really well. Off center the sprue hole there, that way you don't make too much of a mess like I did. Beautiful. This, no waste, back in the pot. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Look at that. You got yourself your beautiful rounds. You get yourself a 5-gallon bucket full of wheel weights, even if they're dirty. You go outside and you smelt them down. Put them in your ingot pan right here. You make your ingots. Can't not beat it. And guess what? You're on your way to self-sufficiency. Don't have any bullets? Ain't running down to your local Wally World to get them. You cast them up yourself in the garage. Shop, backyard, back porch, whatever. It's the self-sufficiency is what draws a lot of guys to casting your own bullets. All you do is you take your 5-gallon buckets full of lead, store them. Lead will stay forever. Next, we're going to load some up and show you the powder charge and how we're going to do it. Stick around. Loading your 41 Colt should be as straightforward as loading any other caliber. Those of you not familiar with hand loading should do so before trying what we're about to show you. Here are our beautiful hollow base bullets we cast in the last session of the video. Make sure you have a supply of brass, preferably from one lot. Starline offers high quality brass, which we're using for our run, especially if you consider how much bell we're going to have to give our case mouths. With the constant expanding and contraction of those mouths, that's the one place that they tend to fail first. Primers are Wolf Small Pistol. We chose Wolf because they tend to have the hardest primer cup of all primer types. They're less likely to pierce a primer, especially with the heavy leaf springs in these old Colts. But whatever you have on hand may work well. I like a Hornady inline priming tool, as you can really feel the primers bottoming out. I've gone through 3 or 4 of those Lee priming tools that are mostly made with pot metal. Redding was the die maker we chose to use for this one, since they were the only ones I could find at the time in stock. 3 die set is what you're going to need: a decapper, case mouth expander, and bullet seater / roll crimper. The 41 Colt set came with a bullet seater, which was basically a hollow tube and caused lines to be pressed into the bullet's ogi while seating. So being that I had a 40 caliber Redding set, I swapped out the seater die and used the 40 caliber version with the bullet support to help in seating. First, you want to prime your cases. Usually I do this by hand and like to feel the primers sit snug on the bottom. Different primers seat differently. For instance, Wolf's are a bit tighter, while Remington go in too loose for my liking in some cases, especially if you use different brass head stamps for your pistol loadings. Primer should seat slightly below the head case. Otherwise, any protrusion will bind the revolver, making your day at the range a short one. Next, you want to adjust your belling die so that you get a nice opening which the bullet will slide into without binding. The bullet should be able to stay in the mouth on its own accord, with some light pressure. This is where the high quality cases come into play. If you have brass which cracks, it usually happens at the mouth from case hardening after a few reloads. Adjust and check. Remember, you do not want any lead shaving when you seat your bullets. That would not be good for accuracy. Plus, we went through all that work of casting our bullets. Why do you want to deform them? Now it's time to seat our bullets. Install your seater die and make the necessary adjustments. The density and size of Unique fit well into the larger black powder cases, so they just decided to make it into a smokeless powder. We need the powder to be fast enough and to build up enough pressure to be able to expand the hollow base of the bullet to grip the sides of the barrel so we can get some form of accuracy. The IPP powder you see here is formulated to mimic Unique and is an industry canister powder I picked up some years ago. Many factory loaded handgun rounds from all manufacturers are loading using this generic substitute. They use the powder to load everything from 25 caliber up to 44 specials, 44 mags, and even 45 ACP. This time we're forced to use real black powder since our Colt is dated 1898 and the smokeless powder proof is not stamped on the left side of the trigger guard. The VP mark means verified proof and lets you know this gun was manufactured with different steel suitable for the higher pressures of smokeless powder. Remember, when in doubt about whether a gun can be fired with smokeless or black powder, ask a trained gunsmith. Even if they're unsure and you can't find out the answer, contact Colt, they'll give you more info. Otherwise, I tend to err on the side of caution and use black powder. It's more fun and realistic, for me anyway. Triple F is the chosen granular size, and I find Swiss to be smaller and burn a bit faster than GoX, which is larger in size. I like to make my own powder throwers using spent cases and wire. That way in the field you know exactly what your measurements are without having to lug your spout around. Plus they're free. And brass is everywhere. For a time like this that you don't have a predetermined size already made, just use your scale and measure out to 20 grains. Find your lead dipper that matches for fast loading. You do have a set of lead dippers, don't you? Remember our prior video on using these things? You don't? I highly advise you check it out. If you have an old-fashioned measuring device, such as this one, use that. Then use a lead dipper, which will give you the same powder charge. Measuring devices seem to have a larger mouth, which doesn't aid in charging your cases. After charging, do a slight tapping of the brass on your bench. It aids in settling the powder and in bullet seating when the time comes. Now place your bullets in their mouth and get to work. Use your standard case tray so you don't make a mess knocking things over as I have a tendency to do. Don't be too concerned about exact measurements here. Remember, black powder is more forgiving than smokeless, and an extra grain or two will not hurt anything. Pressures with black powder are very mild compared to smokeless, which is why the old steel could handle it. Even mild charges of smokeless can destroy an older gun after repeated firings, while black powder's gentle push will do little harm, usually. But remember, these are all guidelines. Your experience may vary. Next, you want to lube the bottom 2 grooves on the bullet. The top groove is the crimp groove and should not have any lube. I find it's easier to lube the bullets when they're in the case like this. Here we're using a mutton tallow beeswax mix, 50-50. This aids in keeping the fouling soft in the barrel while providing adequate lubrication. You can use any non-petroleum based lube, Crisco, olive oil, some guys even use paraffin wax. Petroleum based lubes tend not to play too well with black powder, creating a nasty black sticky fouling substance, hard to clean from your original Colts. Remember, when you're loading these guys up, you do not want any airspace between the bottom of your bullet and your powder charge. You're better to compress your bullet on top of your powder charge of black powder than not. This is not like smokeless powder. Smokeless powder compression usually runs the pressures very high and very dangerous. With black powder, if you don't compress it, is when you have to worry. Seat your bullets slowly. With this charge, there's going to be some compression, which is what we want for safety. Go slow. I like to rotate my rounds sometimes to get an even seating. Now, remove your seater stem and crimp your rounds. Make sure you put just enough to make the roll crimp and not damage your bullet. I've seen bullets get over crimped that when you try to pop them out of the case, they crack in two. So remember, less is more here. I prefer to do this in two separate steps so there's no mashing of your projectile. As you go along in your process, remove the cylinder and use it to check bullet fit and crimp. They should drop right in without any pressure and slide back out. If not, go back and see what didn't work. Go back to each step, one by one. It might seem like a pain, but hey, you're hand loading. Using the cylinder as a chamber gauge is an old technique that can save lots of heartache at the range, especially after you load it up about 1,000 rounds. Wipe the excess lube off your rounds, and you're ready to go. Cleaning your black powder revolver should not be the chore that everyone makes it out to be. Here I'm using Ballistol sprayed down liberally after I disassembled the gun. Be sure to get in all the nooks and crannies. You want a brush here that's total brass, with nylon bristles preferably. The scrubbing down inside each of the cylinders. Some people use a clamp to hold this on your bench. I just kind of use my hand. Now what we're doing here is just loosening the fouling. And if we're using our proper black powder lube, this stuff would just flow right off. A couple squirts down the bore. Run your brush down. Give it a nice scrubbing. Follow that up by a couple of swabs with a patch. Here I'm not even using a jag. You can have a jag this size, or you can just do it like I'm doing, just by pushing it down with the cleaning rod. Make sure you wipe everything outside the gun. The ratchets where the hand goes in, make sure you wipe down the cylinder completely. I like an old toothbrush here just to get into nooks and crannies. Now with this milk concoction, what's going to happen is it's going to coat everything with oil. So even if you don't get something, there's no way for rust to take place because it won't have any contact with air. Make sure you give everything a good, solid wipe down, inside and out. Here I'm going through it just to give it a good measure with a patch that was soaked down with Ballistol. A lot of guys use Murphy oil soap, which is an awesome alternative, very cheap. Now we're going to clean the inside of the frame. Get the top underneath the top strap. Loading gate. And the shield. This can be done, like we said, with any non-petroleum lube you have laying around. I know guys who use olive oil. Pay particular attention around the firing pin. These recesses are really prone to getting rusted if you don't take proper precautions. Douse the gun. Your 50-50 ballistol mix will not hurt anything. And don't worry about taking the gun fully apart. This stuff flows into everything and will come into contact with black powder fouling and form a barrier against air and rust. Reassemble. Test the gun for function. And you're ready to shoot your next match. No fuss, no muss. Man, black powder, white smoke. Hey, Manny CA with another black powder video of you guys. You know we love it all. Black powder, smokeless, revolvers, rifles, shotguns. We do it all. Why not? It's all fun. It all goes boom. Stick around. You'll watch us shoot this bad boy. So for you guys that are novices to the first generation single action Colt style guns, single action army, where there is no block between the hammer and the cylinder, I'll show you guys how to load this guy up correctly. So half cock, open your loading gate, you load one, skip one, and you load your other 4, close the gate, cock the gun, lower the hammer, and you're going to be over an empty chamber. See that? That's how you carefully carry your gun, because you can see the primer in there. Let's see if we can get it on film. You can see the hammer right there, and you can see how, let me move that a little bit, see it wiggling? How it would be riding up against a primer, which is not conducive to good safety, people. Just another tip to think about if you want to shoot these old fine guns. Whoa. Nothing like the smell of old black in the morning. Just to show you guys, we just unloaded our gun, and check that out. Remember we're talking about going deep on your primer and maybe piercing a primer? That's why I like to use a wolf. You see those? Those are really dinged up. Look at that. And that's on all of them. So it's not a myth, it's fact. When you're loading for these old cartridges, you got to be careful. Old guns. Look at all that beautiful smoke. $18.97, guys, in action. And you see how I'm shooting pinky underneath there helps control your reaction, your jump on your muzzle, gives you a little bit more stability. Oh, look at that. Dirty. Black powder, dirty goodness. One, skip one, 2, 3, 4, 5. Close it, cock it, lower the hammer. You gotta love that smoke, guys. You got to love that smoke. Now after you shoot a few rounds, you can see how nasty the brass gets, and these will have to get soaked. You see that? Your best bet is just to dump them in a thing of water, so they don't go bad on you, and then when you go home, just tumble them to clean them up. Soapy water works really, really well for this, guys. What'll happen is your gun will start to stick on you here because of the black powder. I'll show you. So what you want to do, see, we're starting to get that black powder residue on there, and you can see how many we've shot so far. Brought out a box of 50 just for giggles here, and you don't want to wipe this down. The best way to do that is to get a little bit of water with a rag, or bring out some of your black powder lube, which we didn't. I've got a little break free which we'll put on there, and we'll just wipe it down, because you don't want any petroleum products to come into contact with your gun. You can see all the black powder stuff, just the residue just coming off. But that's the name of the game. That's how it goes. That's all part of the fun. Shooting these old time guns. You can't beat it. Another thing I wanted to show you guys is, here's the bullet that we're using. Hollow base. And you can see how it kind of just falls right out of the cylinder. Alright, and then you can see here, let's do this. I'll show you what happens. Oop, no, it's not doing it now. I think we got a lot of fouling in there. When we had a clean bore, yeah, we got some fouling in here, but before the fouling, the gun, let's see if you can see the fouling in there, the bullet would just slip right through the bore. So that's just the nature of the beast. That's why you got to use hollow base bullets. You can't beat shooting a gun. 1897, older than anybody alive today, and you see what it's doing. And we're about 25 yards. And we're doing about 25 yards. So I'll tell you one thing, it feels heavier than a 38 special. And I would not, I repeat, would not want to get shot with this. So I don't care what people tell you. Getting shot with anything is not fun. And especially one of these guys. Old-time classic single action revolver here. Colt first generation, guys. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. When we get back, I'll show you how to take care of that powder fouling and clean her up. But in the field, just use a little bit of water, or if you got a little bit of brake free, just kind of dab it down. That way you keep your cylinder rotation going and you don't have any hang-ups. That's basically what we're doing. We got a rag, and we're basically just going to wipe some of the fouling you can see off of the gun. We got a jug of water here, and that's all we're using. Pin tends to bind, and that's all we're going to do. Use a rag, wipe her down a little bit, and when we get back to the house, we're going to do the real detailed cleaning on it. And basically it's not really detailed cleaning. Murphy oil, soap, a little alcohol. I like to make sure it's dried up. There. Because once the pin goes, see? Mosquitoes. Once the pin goes, and gets stuck on you, you're not shooting anymore. So just wipe it down with a damp cloth. That way the gun will continue to fire and you can have your fun day. You know? There we go. So that's what we've done basically. And then we've got we always carry our brass rod with us, a little bit of water on the edge here, and we just kind of run it through here and get it. We'll cut out a little piece of, a lot of times what guys would do in the old days, they would spit on their rag, you know. So you spit on the rag and you run it down your bore. A lot of the muzzle loading rifles, basically what they did. You can see all the powder fouling we're getting out. And black powder is water soluble. Just water and soap and water when you get home. That's all you need. The grooves, lands and grooves on these guns are very shallow, and they did that to mitigate the amount of fouling that would get caught up. That way the guns would function. You see, we put down maybe 3/4 of a box, and we got some fouling. And the gun started hanging up a little bit, just a little bit. We could have shot a little bit more, but what I want to do is just make sure that we remove a lot of that fouling. Soften it up. That's what the lube's supposed to do too. There we go. And do a wipe down on the ejector rod here. We'll dry everything off. The gun's already warm, so we're not worrying about any flash rusting, because the gun's already got a patina on it, as you noticed. So I'm not worried about that. The only thing I'm worried about is the gun not functioning correctly because of binding. And we're shooting a lot of rounds. And to be fair, back in the old days, they wouldn't fire so many rounds. You know, this gun, the bore on this gun looked brand new. So I'm really doubt this gun had a lot of rounds put through it. And we'll continue again to load the gun. Load one, skip one, Load the other 4. 2, 3, 4. Gate closed. Cock the hammer. Drop the hammer. Verify. See that? Clear. Some guys say legends they would put money in there. Gunfighters used to put money in there so if they got shot they would be buried. I wouldn't believe that. That's better. Gun feels a lot better once we wiped it down. So again, you drop one, skip one, load your other 4. Close the gate, cock it, drop the hammer, and you're ready to shoot. Click. Oh man, you gotta love that smoke. I don't know about you guys. Smoke is great. Smoke is the best part, the best experience. Look at that. Beautiful. 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 First generation 41 Colt. Get out there, do some shooting. Get the gun you want, get the gun you like. It doesn't have to be black powder. Semi-auto revolvers. We love them all. There's no gun racism here on this channel. Guys, get out there, do your shooting, have some fun, have a ball. Do not be scared of the old guns. And yes, this is the Hollywood world. You up watching them westerns, what do you want? We're unloaded, the gun is empty, we're having some fun. So, stay safe. Oh, muzzle pointing at you. Careful. That's alright, we're here by ourselves. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the description below. Till next time.